What a blessing it is tonight, or today I should say, for this special day, to have these great pastors with us. You know, we have 4 great churches: Family Worship Center Florence, Family Worship Center Georgetown. Pastor Justin, why don't you introduce your wife real quick?
Yeah, this is my lovely wife, Joanna.
Hi.
And then on this side, we have Pastor from Columbia. Would you introduce just JT Clark?
Hi, and my wife, Natalie.
Hello.
I'm a pastor here in Florence, and Amy and I are also doing Sumter. This is my wife, Amy, and this is me. And it's a privilege and honor. My wife's laughing. That's not funny.
That's funny.
24 years, and you're still laughing at my
Still
great
laugh.
jokes. Anyway, but we're here today just to talk about Soulmate Sunday and to talk about some things that are important. And, you know, when I think about Soulmate Sunday and think about the 4 things that we could talk about, because, you know, marriage is described as 4 things. There's only really 4 things that matter to a marriage that we have to worry about. And the first one is family. And many of us, you know, I think as I talk to you, I've married both of you, and I know your families and all the different things that there are. It's our personal families in our houses. It's the family external. It's our church families, and all those things are included. So we have a larger family as pastors, but we deal with family. Then we deal with sex as an issue. And, you know, that can be affected by our physical conditions. It can be affected by other things that pollute or corrupt that area of our life. We deal with another subject, religion. We deal with how we believe. When you think about how you believe, coming up, how you were raised, you know, the type of church you attended, the church that you didn't attend, and all of the religious thinking, the more alike we are, those things affect us. The more disalike we are. You know, if a Muslim married a Christian, there might be some conflicts there. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah.
And then the last one, which according to every survey that I've read, indicates is the absolute worst issue, has to do with money.
Yep.
Now, before I get into those and talk to you specifically about it, because you'll have to deal with it. You know, Amy and I took a test when we first got married. We failed 2 of the 4. And, you know, there was some advice not to go that way. And maybe back then we should have listened to some counseling on the subjects that ours was money and family. I had a terrible family. Not really. I had a great family. We both had different families, and they were dysfunctionally functional. And we became a dysfunctionally functional family based on this oddness of our relationship. She was raised in a single parent home. Father left when she was very young. I was raised in a home they were together, argued all the time, and loved each other. It was just strange. But money was listed as the worst of all of them. Now, when you think about what causes a marriage to dissolve, these are the things that cause the conflicts. They're not the dissolving portions. People don't get divorced because of money. They don't get divorced because of their sex life or their family, but they become controversial, and something else causes us to deal with these things. And I'll just ask you, on your thinking, what do you think? I'll start with you, JT. What do you think, talking about those 4 subjects, not being the thing that would dissolve it, but I mean, think about how you got married, things you're even dealing with now, new children on board, you know, discussions about where you're going with family and all that stuff. Talk to us a minute about that.
Well, I think that you're right. That the areas help you identify where the problems are going to arise. But then once the problem arises, once the discussion or the issue or the fight, the argument arises, then it becomes, you know, how you're going to deal with it. Is, you know, and I think that was one of the biggest keys for us to figure out is, okay, we knew there were going to be issues with family. We knew there were going to be issues with money. We knew there were going to be issues with these things in our life. How do we deal with them? How do we fight about it? How do we argue? How do you find a common ground? And how do we overcome by discussing? Because the way that I discuss is a little bit different than the way that she discusses, and the way that I problem solve is different than the way she problem solves. So I think realizing, you know, one of the greatest resources that I think we've had in our marriage is the book Love and Respect. And in that book, he talks about pink goggles and blue goggles, and understanding that she talks in pink goggles, and then I've got to sometimes put on or try to look through pink goggles to see how she sees things.
Miss Natalie, what do you think about that?
I would agree. I think part of what's really important is just figuring out how to communicate, and those issues are going to arise in those areas, and learning one another and figuring out how to communicate while you're honoring the other person, instead of getting in a situation where you're tearing one another apart, but figure out how to work as a team. And it's okay that those things arise, but this is how we work them out together.
Well, you know, when I was growing up, Pastor Justin, My dad didn't like to buy tools. And so he fixed everything he could fix with whatever was available. I mean, if an onion would work, he'd fix it with an onion. If we were going to build a bike, and he had a butter knife and the outside of an eggshell or something, he could fix a bike with the outside of an eggshell and a butter knife. We fixed my bike. Now it never actually worked right. Because you'd be riding down the road and the handlebars would fall off, and all those kinds of things. And then you bring it back to him and he'd say, yeah, I can fix that. But we went to a guy one time that actually built bikes. And what was interesting about the guy that could build bikes, he said, I can make that bike work and your handlebars won't fall off anymore. Now, I didn't know that, because my dad had always told me, well, my dad did it that way. And his dad did it that way. And, it was passed up to me the way to do it. Interestingly enough, this is how we do our relationships.
Yeah.
You may not realize that when we go back in time and we look back in the history of time, we're going to find out these 4 things were problems in our family. You could look at your own relationships with your moms and dads and grandparents, and you'll see that they fought about the same things we fight about. There's nothing new to the fight. But we're carrying along with us a lot of times this baggage from our history, and we're not willing to deal with it because if it worked for grandma, it's going to work for me.
Right.
But you'll find out that that's not true. And when we get to you talking about the same subject, thinking about how you guys kind of handle this, what are some of the things you can say about these dealing with just dealing with them?
I believe just finding out, being able to identify when those situations arise, how to, I guess I would say I agree with you. I find that I go back into the way I was brought up and the way I can remember things, and I find myself coming across the way that my family did it, and many times that's not how her family did it. And so then we have a miscommunication because to me, I didn't think I did anything wrong, but yet, she might see it in a different light than me. And so I try to deal with it the way I was taught. And so a lot of times I try to even encourage young people nowadays, especially if you're single, before you get married, is to go and work on yourself now.
Yes.
Learn how to resolve conflict now, learn how to handle finances now, learn how to, be able to not be angry now. Don't wait until you get married, because I think a lot of times people go into a marriage thinking that other person is going to fix them, but really I believe that a lot of times that other person, what they do is they magnify things that you don't see, and all of a sudden then that becomes more of an issue.
Sound good to you, Ms. Joanna?
Yeah.
Do you see something similar to that? When you talk about, have you seen that type of dealing with conflicts, maybe the communication issues or something like that?
Yes, definitely. Not only do you have to communicate, but you also have to listen. And I think that's hard for people to do too, because they tend to focus on sometimes themselves in a way that they're right, instead of trying to put yourself aside and just you both have to see the bigger picture. It's not about who's right and who's wrong, but how do we get past this?
That's good. How about you, Miss Amy? What do you think, dealing with it? We've dealt with this for years, 24 years we've been going at it. Talk to the people, tell them some of the conflicts that we've done. No, maybe not too deep. Don't tell them everything.
Well, I think I think success, we've been married going on 24 years, and I feel like religion is, of those topics you mentioned, I feel like that's the key, because I feel like when you have this right, when your relationship with God is right, then those other things are going to work out, because the Holy Spirit is going to talk to you and deal with you and lead you, and then in your relationships, in your discussions, and that to me is the most important thing, is your relationship with the Lord before you get married, and even in your marriage, that you're always keeping this right.
I believe that's exactly right. If I had to look at it, one of the things that I think all of us have to do, when I think about my relationship, when Amy and I started out, our first year of marriage was not heaven. Right. That's all I know to tell you. I still remember in our first year of marriage, slamming stuff, throwing stuff at each other, Cokes and stuff like this. I hate to even tell y'all. That's 24 years ago, so don't judge me today. And Amy never threw a Coke. I'm just kidding. That's not true. We had our moments. I remember a fight where I was out on top of the car, jumping up and down on the hood of the car. This was the way my family attended to things, and hers was bring gifts and things like that. It's just totally different. Yeah. I've come to realize, and you helped me with this. After that first year, working through things, dealing with the stuff we had to deal with, there was a lot of transition that had to happen. I've come to realize, this is my thing. This is what I'm saying to you, that it's really a definition of one. It's not a definition of two, it's a definition of one. In both ways. The Bible talks about it this way. It says that you're to become one flesh. Now, unlike any other relationship, this isn't like a work relationship. You can't treat this like it's work friends or friends or relational. This is one body. God said when you get saved, we become one flesh.
Right.
So number one, we're not to deal with it as two. I mean, your kidney and your heart have to work together. If your kidney got bad and said, you know what, if it wasn't for me, we're going to fall apart. I mean, I keep the blood clean, and if I didn't keep the blood clean, you're going to die to the heart. And if the heart said, well, you know something, if I don't give you blood, you're going to die. No, they had to work together for us to live, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I think when we start looking at it, it becomes a definition of one. But then the second part of that is to say, I feel like that when I started dealing with me instead of dealing with her, I think you wives might understand this more. I think men are probably more prolific in doing this. We're more realistic. We are logical creatures. We're not emotional creatures. We don't think on an emotional level. You all know that. And you do. We have to learn to identify things at the level of our wives' emotions. We want them to act like they're just logical. Well, we're supposed to go there today. Today, all three of you wives had to be here. As husbands, our wives had to say you had to be here. You might have had other things you could have done other than be here. And it might have even been an argument to get here, you know. I mean, you know what I'm trying to say? It's like, I got other things to do. And when are we going to get this done? And we were going to start at 4, and it's 5:30 or whatever it is, you know, right? But because in our minds, we only have a task to accomplish that task is to show up today, and you had to be there. You had emotions attached to that. I got kids. I got to take care of them. Who's going to watch them till 10 o'clock at night? Man, we got to get this done. My mother ain't going to watch them all, right? It took a lot for me, Aim, to come to a point where I was able to identify myself.
Yeah.
Do you guys understand what I'm trying to say? Now at this point in your relationships, you've been married
7 years.
7 years.
Going on 7.
7 years. And now at this time, you're having transitional moments. You're starting to see things as you get closer to 10. There's more and more transition. You're moving in the better direction, and I can tell you after 10 it just gets better. But I've really, really, really come to realize that I needed to fix me. I really found that out. The more I fixed me, the more she fixed her. And it was very different the way we fixed each other, the respect that we could have for each other, the honor we could have for each other. You know, for me, Amy sits at the highest place in my life. I mean, just literally sits on the highest seat in my life. I would do anything I had to do to maintain this. There's no exit door. There never has been. There's been I'll shoot you, but no exit door. Amen. Y'all know I'm kidding. I'm just playing. But I don't know. You guys share. Wives, I want you to share as well. Maybe you've seen this where your husbands have begun to identify. You know, I had to fix my attitude. I had to fix the way I loved. I had to fix the way and adjust my spirit towards her, my conversation. I don't jump on the cars anymore. Matter of fact, I mean, if we have a fight anymore, it may last minutes.
Right.
And it's over.
Yeah.
Just minutes.
Right.
We do not stay angry at each other. There's nothing worth this relationship. Nothing is big enough for this.
That's right.
Are you guys headed that direction?
I think so. We had, you know, it was interesting. Last year, of course, we got thrown into the whole situation with the pandemic. And we were just all running as busy as we've ever been. And during all that, there was a lot of grace at the beginning. There was a lot of grace, and my wife was very gracious. And then having learned what you're saying through the years, I realized at a certain point that the grace was ending. And that there was some frustration rising, and I knew by the Holy Spirit, to your point, Miss Amy, I knew in my spirit as I began to pray things out that it wasn't her, it was me, and I knew it was, but then it was figuring out, okay, what was it in me, and I wrote this down to say today because I felt like I could summarize it with this: that busyness was not an excuse for selfishness, and that me being busy was not an excuse to be selfish and I wasn't trying to be selfish, but I had become busy and it became all about me, and I've got to get all this stuff done, and I just need you to help me, I wasn't speaking her love language. I knew what it was. I had done the test, we had read the book, we knew that, but I wasn't speaking her love language. I wasn't doing the things that I knew to do. And I think that if I could say anything today of what I've learned recently, most recently, one of the biggest nuggets to success in our marriage was that busyness is not an excuse for being selfish.
That's good. Yeah, I think for our relationship, I definitely believe that I've gotten a lot better. Year 7 is a lot better than year 1. and doing that in some of these great books and resources that we've been sharing about, one of them is talking about his needs, her needs, and we talk about the 10 emotional needs. And I think even most recently too, we, not realizing, like, sometimes I didn't realize it, but as I've grown and I've been able to see that, there can be, I think it was called disrespectful judgments. That's one of the emotional needs. And sometimes I didn't realize that I was doing that because I didn't see that in my eyes, but I did, and so I've been able to grow in those areas. And as Pastor and Miss Amy were both saying, I'm able to, as I've gotten better, to realize that I shouldn't do that. Then, it's definitely helped our relationship. It sounded like she's like, I've been telling you that for years, kind of thing, but I just couldn't see it. I couldn't figure it out.
Honesty, truth, all those things matter. I see couples that again, back to the one concept where one becomes part of a dysfunctional maze, where they try to fulfill the needs of another by simplifying their life or accommodating to everything another person says. I want you to know something, that's never going to work in the long term. It only works in the short term. It's only when we're willing to, number one, look in the mirror. You've got to look in the mirror and determine for yourself, not about them. Have I become what God wants me to become to serve them? Not have I become what's necessary to bring peace. See, Adam did that. Adam came to the point where he brought peace in the garden, but he failed God and he failed himself. In the end, he lost both the peace of God and the beauty of the relationship he had because he accommodated to make sure his wife was happy rather than fight and say, no, I'm not going to eat the apple. I think there is just as much value in us accepting the relationship questions from our spouses, receiving information. I make the last judgment in our house, there's no doubt. We made that decision together. I asked her if that was okay. She said yes. Y'all laugh at that, but that's really the truth.
Right.
She made a decision. You said choices. She made a decision to say, I'm going to give you the last choice. But I've also made a decision that it won't be without your consent. It won't be without you in agreement with it. It won't be without hearing what you have to say about it and considering everything in the choice. When we make the choice together, I'll say yes to it. I may be the one that goes, we're going to do what you said. It's not always what I said.
Yeah.
Does this make sense to anybody? And I see people, these are just simple mistakes we don't do anymore. I mean, the only time I did that stuff, it only cost us trouble. It cost us problems. I lost money. Something happened. If I tried to accommodate, I might get peace for a season. Right. But I was losing me. I mean, have you experienced this where you at times gave into stuff and you can only do that for so long. At some point, you're going to raise your own hat up. And you're going to say, I'm not that. And that's a bad day. That's what I see in the church. It's what I see in relationship is somebody tries to make the other one happy, accommodate for issues, and then one day that ends. Then one day you tell the truth about money. One day you explain how you really feel about the kids. One day you come in and say, I've had enough. Let me tell you what I really think. You've been abusing me. I feel belittled.
Right. That's right.
Can't do that and keep a relationship. You have to change. I'm going to give you a few things that we've got to close up because there's other things on the agenda. But I love this. It's part of that book. He said, take control of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. Yep. You take control of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. You're part of a picture in every relationship, in every fear dance, or what he calls the fear dance. You choose to do something. Remember that your thoughts determine your feelings and your actions. Your thoughts. Your thoughts. Yep. Stop living someone else's thoughts. Right. Don't you think that's good? Take responsibility for your buttons. Yeah. What people can push to start your engine. Yeah. Amen?
You choose how you respond to it. You can't always choose when someone pushes that button.
Right.
But how you respond to the button.
How will you respond?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your wants? What are your needs? How do I fill that up?
I think if we're all honest, we know how to push each other's buttons pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And we do that when we get angry and things. We just have to stop that. Don't give others the power to control your feelings. Yeah. Don't allow them the ability. Focus on the right person. Person's responsibility means refusing to focus on what the other person has done. The only person you can change is yourself. You can stop doing this dance that we do. You control whether or not you're stuck in this dance. It takes one person to stop a destructive situation. Don't look to others to make you happy. Amy and I are just really, I told her this morning, I'm a happy person. I'm just happy. And you don't have to make me happy. And Amy's just a happy person. It takes a lot to make Amy less than happy. And when we come together, we just do happy. We ought to try to do happy. Wives, husbands, just do happy. If you're unhappy, maybe there's a physical situation. Maybe we need to do some physical work. Maybe you're out there and maybe you need to go see a doctor and make sure that, the levels of hormones and whatever is right. Husbands, in my case, I remember physically I was struggling with things. It was affecting our marriage. Now that I'm healthy, I'm a little worried about, going back on the diet and trying to get the weight off again. She's laughing again. And we were listen, let me tell you what my wife does to me. This is a true fact. My wife refuses to lie for me. It doesn't matter what it is, she won't lie for me. When my pastor and I talk, if I was elevating something or escalating something, because when you're preaching, you might, you don't mean to, but you had more people in church Sunday than you really did. Yeah. Anyway, I did all that. And Pastor Reggie would always ask her, is that the truth? And she'd go, I ain't lying for him. So today I'm somewhere and somebody was asking me about my weight and they were talking about me eating late at night. Well, I think I've made some adjustments. And she looked at the woman and I said, I think I've made some adjustments. I'm not doing too bad. And my wife looked, I ain't lying for him. Don't lie for each other. The truth is the truth. Yeah. Don't make up stuff. Don't keep covering. I see people try to cover. When you cover for the failure in your spouse, you just reinforce the continuation of the failure.
Yeah.
Stop the failure.
Yeah.
Be willing to, I'm not going anywhere. The door's not going to open. I'm not leaving. You don't have to distrust me in this area. But you got to know something. We can't continue on this path. We can't continue on a path that's not going to work. You look at me. Tell me what I need to change. Because I'll look at you and tell you what I see. And let's adjust our lives so that we can benefit the world and ourselves.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than just defending what's wrong.
Yeah.
That's good.
Amen. I didn't mean to preach. This is supposed to be a conference. Become the CEO of your life.
Yeah.
I love that. You can't force people to meet your needs, but when you express legitimate needs to others, they can choose to step in and assist you.
Right.
Lastly, forgiveness heals relationships. Taking personal responsibility means you confess your wrongdoings and ask for forgiveness, and you also forgive others. The Bible gives us as a description. He said, if you pray to your Father to forgive you, you first have to forgive. If you forgive, your Father will forgive you. Now think about that. Wow. For those of you that are watching, I want you to know that we're out of time, but I want to give them one last opportunity, husbands, wives. Maybe Amy wants to say something, and then we'll move on to our next section.
Well, I guess I would just say that I think marriage is a wonderful, precious, valuable thing, and when you, I just believe that having a relationship with the Lord, may not guarantee a perfect marriage, but that it's so important and so valuable, and staying in church and reading your word and staying in prayer and letting the Holy Spirit lead you and picking the right person. And like Pastor Justin was saying, that while you're waiting to find that right one, someone was asking me the other day, I said, well, that's what you do. You work on yourself. Get your finances in order. Read your books. Get yourself ready for marriage, and it'll be wonderful.
I would just say that, out of all the things we've talked about and all the things that you're going to hear today, sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. And I think that I would just say, don't be afraid of the work, and just start on one thing. I feel like God points things out, you always say, I like your phrase, he'll put his finger on things. So he'll point things out to you, and you know these things, and just start on one area. And like we keep repeating, work on yourself. Just start on one area and work on that and improve on that. And be willing to take that feedback from your spouse, because they'll tell you the truth. They'll be honest and help me. I'm trying to improve in this area. Don't be afraid, especially for men, right? Sometimes I think we're afraid of, well, what if I change, or what if I, that's good. And don't be afraid of making that jump and making those changes.
Miss Amy hit on this, but I just want to encourage those that are single and that are not married. I didn't start dating my husband until I was 30 years old, and I know a lot of people. Sometimes we can compare ourselves, or when I was growing up, I had in my mind that I was going to get married around a certain age and start having kids at a certain age. And I'll just encourage those that are not married. You might be dating, you might be engaged, but you are not married and you're not committed yet, to just take this opportunity to find the right one, to find who God has for you, to find someone that believes the way you do, because so much of what we've been talking about is still going to take work. Nobody's relationship is perfect, but if you can do it God's way from the start and get advice from your pastor, allow people to speak into your life, then you'll just be so much far ahead. So I just want to encourage those singles.
That's great.
Well, I would say that you got to have God number one first, and then you have to want to work on yourself. You have to want to be a better person. You can't expect the other person to accommodate you. And you also have to realize that, yes, no marriage is perfect. There's always going to be problems, and you have to learn how to go about those problems, and you can't be afraid to ask for help. I know a lot of people want to solve problems on their own, but there's so many different resources, books. Talk to your pastor if you have issues. There's people out there to help you, and they might have different experiences than you ever thought to have.
That's good. I think too, just to add to that, is to be transparent in your relationship before you get married, and even if you are married. I mean, my wife and I, we don't have any secrets. I mean, she knows that. I mean, she can get in my email, she can get in my phone, she can get in my anything. I mean, and I can pick up her phone at any time. I mean, there's not any question about that. We've never had any issues with that. But I would encourage you. I mean, if you can't trust that person, how are you gonna be married to them? How are you gonna, So you need to be transparent in your relationship all the way around.
Well, I could keep going, and everything you said made me want to say 10,000 things more. You know that. I could just go on, and we will. I want to encourage you. Coming up are several other things that are going to really bless your life. Enjoy what you hear today, and the more we do this, the more you get involved. We believe that Jesus can heal and save every marriage.
That's right.
I'm not saying that's going to happen, because we believe that about healing as well. We believe that about prosperity, and we get different levels of success. And the Bible talks about 30, 60, and 100-fold. So I want to say this to you. There are relationships that are going to be healed and are going to remain. There are relationships that are not going to be healed. Both of them, we need to believe God for continued blessing, and ongoing trust in God will allow us to try again if we have to, or to succeed in what we're already doing. We love you. Thank you for everybody that's helped.
Thank you for having us.
Yes,
From all the pastors at Family Worship Center, we love you.